21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Probably one of the most common problems I hear with CEOs is that they hire a CTO or a dev shop and they have no clue what they're saying. And what usually happens is they think that they're so smart and that's why they don't understand them. So they must be great. But that's actually a false positive. That is your signal. You should not work with that person. Now, maybe that means that that person is actually just, can't do the job, or maybe he's even lying and just trying to get your money. But even without that, it certainly means that you cannot collaborate with them. It's easy to understand that for people being their own professionals. So if you're an entrepreneur in plumbing or healthcare, manufacturing, whatever it is, you are at the top of your game. You can explain what you do to anyone. You can explain what you do to kids, to neighbors, to people on the swim team, to random baristas, and certainly to other professionals. So if you meet another professional and you don't understand them, you should actually think about that. Wow, if they knew what they were talking about, or if they could communicate with me, they would be able to explain what do they do, how they do it, and how we can work together. So by far, one of my best advice to give to CEOs and entrepreneurs that are not techie is, if you don't understand the technology guy that you're speaking with, probably not the person you should work with. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I started my first company when I was 14, built and sold multiple tech companies while I was still in my 20s. And I grew up professionally both as a software engineer, like learning in the development world, and as a marketer. And specifically the kind of marketing that I grew up in the early and mid 2000s is affiliate marketing. Now they call it performance marketing, commission-based marketing, and stuff like that. So my approach to technology and growth is very similar. I basically do number-driven growth. And in the past 20 years, I've built companies, sold companies, bought companies, turned companies around, did it as a service for major corporations, and of course with startups in 0 to 1. And what I've learned over the years, I really like small teams. I like 0 to 1. I like takeoffs way more than I like landings. That's my superpower, getting a lot of energy in place, getting all the resources together, creating a vision, and putting it to rapid and aggressive execution to get results. And currently in my career, I realized that if earlier on my zero state was non-existent, meaning I looked at a project as an idea, nothing existed, and I needed to figure out how to put the atoms from space into a tree and cut the tree down, make it into wood, and put the wood in the fire and do all these things. Now, instead, I go into companies that are already established, but they're stuck. So they might be 20 million in revenue, 100 million in revenue, and they have a 10x opportunity in front of them, but they don't know how to unlock it. And that's how I became a fractional chief technology officer. And I also operate as a fractional chief revenue officer, leading marketing and sales. Sometimes I do both for companies. So today in my career, my zero state is the raw materials of whatever these amazing entrepreneurs built. And my one state is the big future vision of where we can go. It's nicer now because now we have like money and employees and resources and clients. So it's a different set of challenges than the classic 0 to 1, where you need to figure all those things out. And at this point, I've worked with dozens of companies. I work with a handful of companies now. In multiple verticals, if it's healthcare, manufacturing, nonprofit work with some on government-related contracts and government-related engagements. And this year, I opened an accelerator and a community for chief technology officers that want to become fractional chief technology officers and be able to work on a variety of projects, impact many lives, and enjoy the fun part of leadership. So you get to be at that 30,000 foot where you have all the insight, the strategy. You get to parachute in once in a while to shine with your brilliance, and then other people get to do the work. The biggest mental model I adopted over the years, so that allows me to have scale across multiple projects, is I want to be in charge and not in control. And the way I explain to people is that I want to be in the back of the Uber, not the front of the Uber. I want to set the destination, has to change the music, change the AC, but somebody else is holding the steering wheel, using the turn signals. And when I can be that, I realize that's what my client needs. My clients and my partners, they need my leadership. They don't need my labor. They don't need my implementation. And that's the right symbiosis between both of us, because they can benefit from my experience. My experience comes and I can give them all of my lessons and none of my scars. And they don't have my full-time price tag that for many companies is just not viable, because most businesses are tech-enabled businesses. They're not tech businesses. So for them to basically compete with technology talent that tech companies usually hire is economically not there, because they don't have those, 30x multiples on their businesses. One of the most exciting developments in the past couple of years that everybody's talking about is AI. Now, this is an area I've been in for 20 years. I actually built my first neural network when I was 14, and I have 5 patents in artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, all those things. And when ChatGPT came out to the world and suddenly made this very popular and useful, and so I would differentiate that. Blockchain, for example, became very popular and not useful. Okay, AI became popular and useful. And there's a few different mental models that I love sharing with people. So they, one, adopt AI sooner and faster and make it a part of their day-to-day, but also understand what it can do and cannot do. Because usually when new technologies come in, there's a tendency for everybody to go to the Star Trek holodeck moment, right? Like, yes, AI, the machines are taking over, the Terminator days are coming, and so on and so forth. And we're wildly far away from that kind of a universe, but we shouldn't underestimate it. So first of all, one of the better mental models, the way I make large language models, which is the general category of this kind of AI that came to the market, how it works so people understand it intuitively, I do this exercise. And the basic thing that a ChatGPT type product tries to do is guess the next best word. That's what it tries to do. And here's how to think about it. If I told you, the audience right now, I gave you the first word and I'm gonna challenge you to give me the next one. And that's the game. That's what we're playing. So I'm gonna give you the first word. The first word is old. What do you think is the next word after old? Very commonly when I do this with large audiences, I get news and paper and house and man. Usually I ask, okay, based on this, how many people think it's old? How many people think it's house? How many people think it's news, and so on? And there's different hands raising. I'm like, great, thank you. Now I'm going to give you the next word after old, and you're going to give me the next one after that. So the second word is McDonald. And then I ask, what's the next word? And everybody resoundingly says had. And I explain, in statistics, we call this, 99% confidence, right? Now, it could very well be old McDonald was a very difficult man. That would be a valid sentence. But intuitively, everybody understands, well, most likely, if this sentence starts with old McDonald, the rest of it is probably had a farm. So, and that's what it tries to do, not tries, that's what it does at scale. Now, anything beyond what I just said is sophistication layers, is adding filters and capabilities. We have these things called temperature. Temperature basically describes the creativity. So if the temperature is 0, it basically means that every time you put a word, it's just going to put the most statistically relevant word after that. So if it scoured the internet and news was the most common word after old, then every time you put in the word old, it would print the word news. When the temperature is set to 100, then it's completely random. So it could use a word that is the 0.001% likely word to be after old and so on. So just for reference, most temperature settings in LLMs, I set it 80% as an example, 0.8. So one, intuitively understand what it does. So it's not magic. It's not thinking, okay? The fact that you see a response as a person and you like it is quite amazing. It's amazing that statistics and mathematics can do that to us. It's kind of, it shows more about us than about the machine, that we're very basic in so many ways, right? Like our thinking is so basic. And that's why if people read literature around it, the comparisons are, what type of IQ does the LLM have? 100 is the average. And now a lot of these systems can produce stuff that parrot or mimic someone with like 120 IQ. 125 IQ and so on. Eventually it'll be, way more, but it's still parroting, echoing, mimicking. And to that extent, I want to reflect to people that there's a lot of talk about different technologies about, resurrecting Einstein or Thomas Jefferson or Ben Franklin, anybody with like large literature, and you'll be able to chat with them. So I'm on the camp that will never be possible. And the reason is that if you're listening to this and you're thinking about all the things you said in the past week, how many things did you say versus how many things did you think? Right? We think way more, so way more words passing through our consideration than through our decision, right? Than through the gate of saying, you know what, I'm going to use this word right now. So for you to look at a plane from the outside and saying, well, Lior just said these words in this order, right? These 10 words in this phrase. But you don't know how many words Lior thought about before he chose those 10. And that's kind of like trying to build the plane from the outside. What the large language models have access to is our output. It's not our input. It's not a process. And that's why, this thought, and this is exactly why, by the way, a lot of these companies do demos and you have these tests, different academicians do tests on how close it is to the person or the customer and so on. And the results are generally like 85%, 80%, 90%. But that gap, the 85 to 100%, is a monster gap. Like you can probably imagine, if you're listening to this, calling your own mother and she being 85% how she normally sounds like. Even if she's like 2% off, 1% off, you'd be like, is everything okay, mom? Right? You would instantly clock it as a human. So just kind of having the appreciation of how the basis of everything works, and then why certain things cannot come. So that's the holodeck kind of Star Trek moment of why some of these things really cannot get there, just from an essential basis of how it works. Now, it can mimic it quite well, which is super cool. I love the fact that you can go in and say, write me an Eminem style rap about the IRS, right? That's very cool. But most likely if you ask Eminem to do that, it'll probably be wildly different. So it's entertaining and useful, but it's not, a replacement. So I love these tools. I think right now in AI, if you're not actively using it, I consider professional negligence, because you get so much support for pretty much any creative activity that a human wants to do. It's akin to you saying, I'm not going to use Google. No, I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to cold call 50 people and ask them what's the answer. Right? Like it's that kind of position. If right now you're taking the position of not using AI, it's as absurd as you saying you're not going to use Google to find stuff online. It's just how you use it and for what. Yeah, I don't think you should. I don't think you should write a love letter and pretend that you wrote it. Not, probably not a great idea. I think authenticity is important. But you know what? If you want to write a love letter and brainstorm with it and polish your love letter so it's more poignant and reflects your thoughts better, then you should totally do it. 100% do it. And the last thing on the dangers of this is when I give these talks about AI and how to use it, and sometimes I do it on AI in family, and sometimes, a lot of time AI in business. The last part is talk about artificial intimacy. and which I really feel like is more of the dangers of AI, meaning how, if you're using these systems to mimic a real relationship and mimic authenticity and mimic caring, then I think you're abusing it at that point. I don't think that's a good use. And I think one of the bigger advantages of any technology revolution that comes in is allow you to have a deeper personal connection with people and not a more shallow connection with people. So I kind of say, use more atoms, less bits, right? More real connection, real conversation, even better physical presence, and let the AI do all the bits and bytes, that should stay in the virtual space and you don't have to do it. Now, from day to day, so one, I think everybody should think about AI in these concepts. And then when they look at any activity in their business, in their life, and kind of saying, well, is this frustrating to me? Is this super time consuming, right? These kind of spotlights of saying, well, if the answer is yes, maybe you should look at AI. Maybe it'll reduce 10%, 5%, maybe it'll reduce 95% of the task, which is amazing. One of the best policies we have in my companies now is that when we can, we say we have a no homework policy. So I have all these tools right now, these tools that kind of basically collapse the timeline between a thought and an idea to a production quality asset. And an asset could be a blog post, could be a PDF, could be a piece of software. Right now you have these amazing tools, and every month this gets wildly better. So I'm sure if you're listening to this episode a year or two from now, it's probably Stone Age level tools. And you can say, I want, you can almost create tools on the fly. You can be at a restaurant and say a prompt, I'm here with 8 friends, whip up a calculator for us, but make sure Danny is only going to pay the tip because he got the gas for this one. And it'll actually create a mini software in 60 seconds flat that everybody can use. That's from as a personal example. But from a business example, if we're thinking about an idea, we're whipping up these tools and we're like, no homework. Instead of just saying, okay, here's the thought, and then somebody taking the task and breaking it down and thinking about some big decisions to make and maybe designing a little bit and then scheduling another meeting and showing to the different stakeholders and decision makers what they think. And then they stare at it and say, yeah, I like this button, don't like this button. Oh yeah, that's a good idea, not a good idea. We probably get rid of 80% of all of those first month decisions within the meeting we had the idea. We're on a Zoom, we have an idea for something to produce, and we immediately fire up one of these tools and we say, here's the idea, develop it. And then we immediately start seeing we're getting the feedback loop is instantaneous. So all the decision makers in real time can say, go left, go right, up, down, good idea, bad idea, let's continue, let's not. So that 0 to 1 friction that I was kind of mentioning earlier gets reduced so substantially. So your time to market and time to insights really goes down to minutes and days between weeks, months, and quarters that the standard would have been. The second thing I would say for business owners, if you have creative staff would be anybody that deals with knowledge, right? So certainly the easy ones is marketing, design, and so on, but also coding, writing, and so on. If they're highly resistant to AI, they're probably not a part of your company's future. That's just what it is. They're probably not a part of your company's future because all it is a tool. And for some professional to look at a tool and say it's a bad tool is especially at the caliber that we're in right now. And as it develops, in such a rapid pace is again, in my book is negligence. And you're basically dealing with a mindset that doesn't develop. And if the mindset doesn't develop in a rapidly developing world, then you're going to be behind and you're going to have a challenge keeping up the pace. Last tip I would share with people is that our intuition to make a judgment call on tools and ideas was pretty good for 2-3 decades with this kind of latest online revolution. Meaning you hear about a tool, you hear about a piece of software, and you maybe get a demo, maybe you sign up, you try it. You're like, oh, you know what? Too complex, or it's missing something, it cannot do something. And then you forget about it. And then, a year or two later, somebody tells you about it and you're like, yeah, I've tried it. It doesn't work. And you're like, oh yeah, you're right. It still has those issues. Now those statements and that mindset is utterly irrelevant because what you might look at a tool And the reason you looked at it is because it made some promise. It was interesting. It said this tool is going to make a lead generation on the fly, whatever it is, right? It was interesting enough for you to look at the tool. And you tried the tool and it didn't do the thing as you wanted. But I would probably revisit it every couple of months, if not sooner, because the rate of change and the rate of product updates when you have a good product team and engineering team is astounding. And so you don't get to just make a judgment call and forget about it. We saw something similar in blockchain. So when a few years ago, when a lot of these investment tokens came up and started becoming popular, there were pitches for a project and a coin. And the pitches looked very much like normal financial investment pitches, right? So they called it this, they call it prospectus, right? They used the word that we use in traditional finance. And they use all these other normal old school trust signal, like this person used to work in finance, this person was a genius technology guy, they have X patents, they have X relationship, all the things you would do when you're trying to IPO a company, right? So people looked at it and they used the same things that they were used to in the past almost 100 years on how to evaluate stock in companies, and said, this is trustworthy. Why? Because we have a CEO with experience, we have IP roadmap, we have a great technology team. And they made a decision just like they would do on a stock, which normally when you make a fundamental decision in trading or in finance, then it's a long-term decision. It's like saying, these are the variables, this is the environment, I trust this is gonna appreciate, gonna go up in value, so I'm gonna buy it now, I'm gonna hold. So people made the same decision, and 2 weeks later, it collapsed. Or 3 months later, it collapsed or changed, by the way, up or down. Could collapse down and then suddenly broke, all reasonable barriers in like 100x or 50x. So we learned that financial market doesn't behave in the same time quotients like our decision cycles. You cannot make a quote unquote fundamental 5-year investment decision in blockchain. It's not a good idea. And I'm specifically referring to all these kind of initial coin offerings, right? Not the majors like the Bitcoin and the Ethereum and so on. So AI is very similar in that respect. So a lot of our muscles that we were used to using need refinement now, different time decision-making. Another great example of this is the best way to use AI is to use a lot of words. So this is a counter muscle from what we have with Google and Twitter. Okay, and X. So for years, 20 some years, we've been used to thinking, what is the least amount of words I can put in this search bar that's going to find me the document that I need, going to find me the information that I need, right? So we're thinking in these 2 words, 3 words, 5 words, 6 words, a question at best, right? Like if you're typing in a full question to Google, that's like a long query. Right? With ChatGPT and the like, you want to use as many possible words as you can, many possible. So this is a blessing for people that are just blabbermouths, absolute blessing. And one of my favorite features by far, right now with the advanced voice mode, lets you have like voice conversations. But just the fact that you can do voice to text is great because people have writer's block. They do not have talker's block. So they can just come in and just start babbling in random order. It doesn't matter what the order is. It's not like Google, right? It doesn't matter if it's lived on. If you can talk for 10 minutes straight, if you talk for 10 minutes straight, you're basically putting 1,500 words, right? We talk about normal pacing is about 150 words a minute. Slow speakers do 120, fast speakers do 180, right? So 150, 10 minutes of talk, which is a lot of time, right? 10 minutes, 1,500 words, which is nothing. We're talking about context windows, meaning how many words you can absorb in a thing that they're measured right now in hundreds of thousands and sometimes more than 1 million. So your entire prompt for one of these tools could be a full book. In fact, in some cases, it could be 20 books just to prompt it. So, but the more information you put in, the more statistics can do their thing. The more the machine can find the right words to put on as the next words after you put in. Just incredible tooling. From a practical perspective, one, making sure that everybody in your company and you, especially as the entrepreneur, have the right mindset of AI. So it's not Star Trek holodeck. We're not there. It's not Terminator. Nobody's, it's not the end of the world. This is effectively what it does. Figure out the next best word. And then you want to work with people that adopt it and use it as a RoboCop suit if you're younger than an Iron Man suit, and just have the appreciation that if you don't use it, you're negligent. And right now, I firmly believe in the common vision that people are sharing, that we're going to see the single person $1 billion revenue company. Because we already see it in online of the single person that makes 10 million, 50 million a year. There's zero reason why that cannot, 20x basically with these amazing tools that we have at our disposal. The biggest transformation that's happening right now in software, people are calling it, so for the past 20 some years, we've had software as a service, right? The big gorilla in the space, Salesforce, and how it transformed the industry. And now it's shifting to another variant people are starting to call service as a software, service as software. Same acronym, flipping. And the context is that now the world is shifting for years. So in 90s and early 2000s, including most of the between 2000 and 2010, you used to be able to just buy software. Okay, so somebody sold like Windows or Office or Photoshop, whatever it is, whatever professional software. You bought the license for the software, and then maybe you bought updates for the version. Right? You bought version 2, and you can upgrade to version 3, or maybe you bought a maintenance package and so on. Software as a service, flip that and kind of say, don't worry about versioning. Pay for the subscription on a per usage basis, how many users or how much credits, how much metered use, stuff like that. And we will continuously update it. We will maintain the technology team and we will push updates, right? Every day, every month, whatever it is. Great. Really, change both the economic models of software development, but also made a lot of things accessible for companies. But now it's shifting back from buying to building. Because now suddenly the economics of build are relevant. You no longer have to spend 50 grand a month starting in a small development team, even if it's offshore and nearshore and all these other, cheaper alternatives, just to build something. Like we can get people that make 4,000 or 6,000 a month with these AI tools, like build entire, products that otherwise would have cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, 7 figures, or just even tens of thousands. But that's very different than a few $1,000s and so on. But to build it right, you really want to have people with experience. Okay. One of the biggest things that's happening right now is that the trend is becoming that the most common programming language is going to be English. Because these tools are so good at just writing code directly. So the people that can win are people that can describe in detail what should happen. All right, this is why I love being a CTO. Because as a CTO, which is different than a consultant, I get to define the problem. I get to connect with the CEO on a vision level. Like, where do you want a business to go? What do you want a business to do? Who are your customers? What are their problems? And then we can say, okay, well, if this is where we want to go as a business, this is what technology's role could be in the business. Maybe we buy things off the shelf. Like I'm not going to go build Microsoft Office. It's a great product and economically viable. No reason for me to build Microsoft Word. But you know what? Maybe instead of licensing this warehousing system or this billing system for $500,000 a year, $100,000 a year, maybe we can build it once for $50,000 or $100,000 and then own it. And here's the nice thing about building it. We can customize it because other companies, when they sell us products, we use a subset of their features. They have entire engineering teams, entire product teams, and we're paying a license, $100,000 a year, $1 million a year, whatever it is, but we're using, 10%, 20%, 30% of the product at best, really, because they're servicing thousands of clients. But now that we can just build just the 10% that we need and only cost 10% of what we had paid, it's a big paradigm shift. But to do that, you need to have somebody that has that old school experience, that knows all the elements of building great product, because building great product is not just the screens and the buttons and the flows. You need to understand what's the security implications, or what is the integration universe? Does it need to play well with other systems, maybe with billing, maybe with medical, whatever it is. What kind of users do we have? Do we have users that go in and need to download invoices? Do we have users that need to use their mobile app to access the information, right? So people with decades of experience that have been there, done that, did it the hard way. And now they can come in on a fractional basis, just like I do with companies, and guide the company as to what tools should we buy, what tools should we build, and if we build, how do we build it that's 10x cheaper than anything else we would buy. So that's an opportunity in the market right now, both for tech-enabled companies to say, I want to take advantage of this AI revolution. So I need a Sherpa, I need a guide, I need a trusted person, not a consultant that's going to come in to solve a problem, but a co-pilot that's going to sit next to me and understand my vision and help me define the problem. And if I know how to define the problem, like most of you know, that's 80% of the solution is just defining the problem, right? So CEOs can have access to that talent. And here's the thing about that talent, and I'm talking to the different CTOs listening to this. They don't love working on a single product. We're creative people. We like variety. So we like the fact that we can work on multiple products and we don't have to come to the office and just work on one thing and watching paint dry, right? Letting engineers do their work and so on, because we have the insight, we have the leadership, and now we need to wait for other people to do the work. So if we can get to work on a variety of projects, we get to kind of share our genius and spread it across multiple projects, learn from all of them, and then compound the insight to all of them as well. So both of us win. That's why when we say fractional CTO, we say it's a fraction of the cost, but full outcome. So a fractional CTO, again, it describes the financial relationship, but it doesn't describe the responsibility. So it's good for them. They can have variety and they can make the money and income they want. And it's good for you because you get to access their decades of experience and insight and leadership without putting in a cost burden of $500,000 a year, or sometimes even north of $1 million total compensation, and instead get that same impact, that same outcome for maybe a third or a quarter of what otherwise it would cost you. So if you're thinking about it, if you're either a CEO looking for a fractional CTO, come and visit us at CTOx.com. We have over 100 CTOs in the program, and we have people that their niche is farmers, plumbers, dentists, fintech, manufacturing, aviation, whatever you can think of. We have people that have been there, done that plenty of times. And if you're a CTO thinking about a new way to enjoy this global career and take advantage of all your years of experience and now gain the freedom of time, money, purpose, and relationships, please come and join one of our webinars or our newsletters. And of course, if we can support you, we have a wonderful program that we'd love to have you.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.